Hi, everybody. Good 1 minute into the afternoon. Sorry about my hair. Today, I'm talking about sleep regression and oh my goodness. Every single mommy baby yoga class I've ever taught, so I've taught it like 2 to 4 times a week for the last 12 years, hundreds and hundreds. Every single class, somebody is talking to me about sleep regression. Either they're in it, hi Whitney, or they are worried about it. And they've heard the worst things about sleep regression. And so I'm going to give you like a little bit of information and a little bit of perspective. One thing, sleep regression is a made-up term. I don't know who made it up. Somebody Google it and let me know who made up the term sleep regression. It's not that old. Like, we haven't been talking about sleep regression for that long. My oldest son is 24 years old, and a lot of you guys know that I was in college when he was born. So I was 20 when I got pregnant and 21 when I had him, Jake. So strangely, I was studying psychology and I was taking a developmental psychology course during my pregnancy. And so it was like the easiest day I ever got. You know, it's like watching a baby story or whatever that's called on TLC, where when you're pregnant, it's like all you want to watch. That studying developmental psychology was really that for me. I couldn't get enough of it. So what I learned when I was pregnant 25 years ago was this, that all of our children between ages 3 and 4 months, around 9 months, 18 months, and 3 years are all supposed to go through different stages of the word I'm looking for, this happens when you're 45. The word I'm looking for sounds like that they go through different stages of development that has to do with learning trust. It's very important that they go through these stages, 3 to 4 months, around 9 months, around 18 months, and around 3 years, that those are crucial times to learn trust. At 3 to 4 months is the time that they are first aware that the umbilical cord was cut, that I'm not attached to her anymore. So those babies tend to be up more at night. Those babies tend to cry more. They tend to only want mom. They tend to nurse and nurse and nurse and nurse and nurse almost constantly. And those things are all happening at the exact right time. So at 4 months, we've made up this stupid term called sleep regression. It's a really negative term. Like, anytime that we're talking about regression, it's like I'm moving backwards. And so a lot of you know, like, I've coined the term sleep evolution, that right now they're going through a stage at 3 to 4 months that they're supposed to go through. And so I really think that, you know, somebody that was like a sleep specialist, I'm doing quotes, sleep specialist, said the term the first time. And like, is your baby going through the sleep regression? And then moms are like, shit, my baby's going through the sleep regression. I need her help, and I'm going to pay her $1,000 to help me get through it. All of you will get through it. What's amazing about this time is our babies actually need us more. They actually do. They need more intentional touching. They need more eye contact, and they need more soothing. And so think of intentional touching like I'm picking up my baby to nurse, I'm picking up my baby to change the diaper, put in the swing, take out of the swing. That's all just unintentional touching or a not connected touching, but an intentional touch is really purposeful. And so it feels like I'm warming up my hands and I'm making eye contact. And then I'm touching my baby with love, like a massage. And so hi everybody, I just love you all. It's so fun to see all these friends. I get to see all your names. That's what I'm pointing at. When we do intentional touching, eye contact, and allow kind of the extra nursing during that time, or sucking on your finger if you're not nursing, it's a good time to let babies like suck on your finger because your hormones come out through your pores. And so all of that is really important. And then their sleep is less disturbed because you know what they learn? She's coming back. When they realize for the first time that the umbilical cord has been cut, then they're freaked out. Like, where's my mama? And so they're like, oh God, oh God, oh God. It is not a great time to cry it out. Any of those stages, 3 to 4 months, around 9, around 18, 3 years. That crying out really is for a time that, it's really not like the most optimal way to raise our kids. Like, she's not coming back, so I guess I need to soothe myself. That, having a baby that's clean and fed and settled, and that maybe they need to shift a little bit and make a little noise and not picking them up immediately, that would not be done during these times of development. A time that they're settled more in life or with their routine, that's an easier time to introduce, and it's less stressful for you. That if you know my baby's okay, we had an easy day, like that's a day that, and a time that you've had a lot of time with the baby versus like, I've been away all day. Like don't try to train your baby to sleep if you've been gone all day. That they need to know my mom's coming back. And during that first 3 years of life, we know as mothers, but also as researchers and psychologists that work with babies, that what we know is if they don't learn trust in the first 3 years of life, they will never learn it. And so those children struggle with trust, and some of them struggle with a lot of things. So that's why orphanages and places like that, foster cares, are really, really encouraged now because of this information to hold babies and hold babies and hold babies. So they have more volunteers doing that. Each of these milestones, you should, instead of freaking out about like, shit, we're in the sleep regression, it's happening, that instead be like, give your baby a high five and say, you're right on track. I was expecting this. We'll be massaging more. And our children pick up on our nervous system. So if we're scared to death of a developmental stage, like I'm afraid of my teenagers, that's the truth, that they pick up on, oh, she's nervous, and then they have a harder time settling. Then they're in that stage longer. So let's just say your baby's 3 to 4 months old. They're easing into that time where they're needing you more, they're wanting to nurse more, they're not sleeping as well. If you are settled, grounded, connected to your breath, I'm okay, then we're supporting our babies with intentional touch, eye contact. Then they just roll through it, and it doesn't last very long. And then you give your baby a high five, like we did that. That this is just one thing that you're gonna get through. Once your kids are 4, 5, 6, 7 years old and they're really doing well with sleep, these first months and years of life don't seem so bad, but it's tricky. I'm going to read a few things. So Whitney Lowry says, yep, just think of it from the baby's perspective. What a scary thing to realize that you are, sorry, I can't open up the whole thing. Let me see if I can push this differently. Maybe my thumbs are too fat. It's not letting me open it. I'm gonna say what I think she's saying. What a scary thing to realize that you're separate from your mother. And what would you want? My motto, and if you've been on Omamas for a long time, you've heard me say this. If you come to class, you've heard me say this a million times, is when I don't know what to do, I just ask myself, what would this like to be my baby during this time? And what would my baby want? And I still ask that. What would my baby want when I'm thinking about how to support my 14, 15, 16, and 24-year-old? That I just pause and think, maybe this isn't the time for a lecture. They've had a hard day or whatever it is. Maybe they need to still come in and snuggle. Kristen says, we do not cry it out. My mom seems to think my son needs to self-soothe. No, he doesn't. He needs to trust. Let's see if I can open up this one. I don't know why it's not letting me open up these. I think it will after I'm done. He needs to trust that I'm gonna be there for him. Your instincts, ladies, are so much smarter, like 1,000 times smarter than any book you'll read, even the experts, even a mother or a grandmother that had 11 kids. Their instincts were made and meant to raise their children. And so there's some great books out there. And I think the best books are telling other people's stories, story after story. Because what I'll tell you is I have 4 kids and they all needed me differently, and they still do. The things that nurture them are different. The time they need with me and my husband are different. And the things that motivate them and overwhelm them are different. And so why would I think that I can write a book, even though I'm sitting here with 13,000 moms, with all of your advice? Every single one of us was built with gut instinct, and your gut instinct tells you, hey, don't do that. Or, yeah, that feels right. Whew, what a relief. And every single time I haven't listened to my wisdom or my gut instinct, I have regretted it. Every single time that I felt really strongly about something and did it, it was right, even if it was something that was new. These kids are just an experiment for us. But the greatest experiment, the greatest lesson is when we listen to our wisdom and then we make the decision to turn in this direction. Then you do it and it feels like a little bit more confident the next time and a little bit more confident the next time. And then we're just doing it. Then we're really listening to our wisdom and know that that's what our baby's soul has desired. Kylie says, I've never agreed with the whole let them figure it out thing. Our babies need us. Sorry, somebody's calling in. Our babies need us. And, you know, I just can only imagine what it must be like for a baby who is crying it out during the period of time in their lives where they're like, I'm separate from her. And then I'm in my crib in a room all by myself. And I want you to think about this. We as adults sleep with our partner. We as adults choose to not have our own bedrooms. But our 4-month-old is sleeping alone in a room without the sounds and the rhythm of our breath and the noises from mom and dad where they feel so safe with. What would that be like for them? I'll tell you another thing. My 3rd baby, his name is Cole, he self-soothed almost from the beginning that I had 2 other kids. I would nurse him and put him down in his little bassinet, or nurse him and throw him in a, baby wearing sling. And he was just always like, suck, suck, suck. Like he was just fine. He was sleeping through the night at like 6 or 8 weeks, and he kind of never missed a beat. He had a really great birth. He came directly to me. I think he's just also, his nervous system's like, she's all right. My mom's cool. She'll be back. And so he just had this way of like really trusting me from the beginning. Not all kids are like that. I had 2 that really, really weren't like that. And they slept with me and slept on me and sucked on my boob or sucked on my finger for years. My second son slept in my bedroom for almost 4.5 years. He was in my bed or in like a toddler bed next to my bed for 4.5 years. And he just needed that extra time. And he needed to be able to see me to know that I was there. So, I think each of our kids, some kids like just do really fine in their room. Cole was sleeping really well till he was about 16 months old, and he learned how to climb out of the bed, and he would come in like he was Superman and present himself in our bedroom. And he slept through the night from 8 weeks old until that night that he learned to climb out of bed. And then that night he got out of his bed 11 times. So that was a whole new crazy thing. So we started co-sleeping with him really at like 16 months so we could all sleep. It was crazy. Paula, I love you. Yeah, and Kaylee says that they only stay babies for so long. Paula is then saying that now at kindergarten transition, say that, what does my baby want? Like there's been so many expectations when our kids become school-age kids, and that they're following rules and they're having to learn a new building and they're making new friends and having to do things all day. And then we come home, and even just like asking them about their day can sometimes really overwhelm them, that it's a lot to be a school-age kid. At what point do you let them cry a little for your own sanity? Mama's sanity is important. I really wouldn't do it at 3 to 4 months. That time, like get them through that period. And like I would go in their room and let them suck on your finger. I would go in their room and make this sound like SHHH, like shh, shh, shh. And you're not telling them to be quiet. It's the same rhythm that your heart made. And so that's the sound internally that your heart makes. Shh, shh, shh. And that can be really soothing for them. I tried crying it out with my oldest son when he was 11 months old. And the reason I tried to cry it out is the craziest reason, that this guy that I was friends with in college had a sister that had a baby that was a couple of years older than mine. So Jake was 11 months old, and she said to him that Ashley's son should be sleeping through the night at this point. She just needs to let that baby cry. And so he told me that. I was like, oh, I didn't know. Look, I didn't know. And one night I let him cry it out. And he was crying really hysterically, so I went out on my front porch and sat. I could still hear him. So I walked across the street and sat on the curb across the street for like 30 minutes. And so think 24 years ago, we didn't have cell phones. I'm just sitting there in the dark all by myself. And I come back in, and he's jumping up and down in the bed, crying hysterically. Like, what is the point of that? What was I trying to do? Make him afraid? And he's so afraid that he passes out cold. Like, I look back on that day and think, what the hell were you listening to this college boy for? I also was exhausted. My baby hadn't slept through the night yet. And some babies sleep through the night at 8 weeks. Some babies take years, but then it's over. And it's over for the rest of their lives. When it's over, it's over. And there's a part of us that will wish that that period of our lives was back. And I agree that your sanity is important. I would think about this instead. what can I do for self-care? So if my baby's up all night tonight, I can be really there with them. I'm going to tell you a beautiful story. My brother, his name is Brody. He's 7 years younger than me. And I was him and his wife Dana's doula with their last two babies. Their older babies are the same age as my kids. So they have a daughter who's about 3.5 and a son that's about 1.5. And then their older kids are like 12 and 14. So they had all this time. They had like 10 years almost in between their second and third. And Brody said to me when their third was born and she was up in the middle of the night, crying and wanting to be up. So I'm calling to check in and he's like, oh, Remy was up so much last night. And I'm like, how is that for you? It's been so long since you've had to be up. And he said, you know, Ashley, before long, I'm going to be driving her to basketball practice and to school. And with the first two girls, I just tried so hard to get them on a schedule. And with Remy, when she's up, I just feel lucky to be up with her. It makes me cry. Like, I think that's such a beautiful perspective that you can't have unless you've been through it, and then you get to go through it again. And then all of a sudden, she's sleeping through the night, and that's over. And you realize that period of your life was fleeting and so beautiful. We used to call it musical beds. We'd all start out one place, and we'd all wake up in the morning in a different place. Yeah, Kristen is saying, if you're getting frustrated with your baby because they're crying a lot, I know, I feel myself getting frustrated. Put the baby in a safe place and walk away and shut the door. And mommy, and that's okay. And I agree. I have a crazy memory once. I'd had a hard day. I was pregnant with my third baby, and Ben was he was just hard and kind of nursed continuously or was crying. And I went upstairs and shut the door to my bedroom and locked myself in my room for a little bit until I could feel like I'm okay. And not only do we need to say, what does my baby want? We also need to say to ourselves, what do I need right now? Am I okay right now? Are the babies okay right now? And crying isn't the worst thing that's ever gonna happen. Crying every day. I have to let my dog out. She's going crazy. Go outside. Maggie and Rosie. That the crying and not coming back can be really harmful. And so I would consider, what do I need? And if my baby's really struggling, is it my self-care that needs some work? And so if my nervous system is really nervous, then the baby feels that, and then I'm patting, shh, 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 shh. And then the baby gets more revved up as I get more revved up. And so some really calming techniques for us. This is not what I was planning on doing today, but I'll get you through this. Orient yourself. If you're feeling like I'm losing it, orient yourself, like I'm in the kitchen. I can feel my feet on the earth, or I can't. If you can't feel your feet on the earth and you're kind of spinning out, so just sit down on the ground, feel your butt on the earth. Touch the ground with your hands and your bottom. Take 3 deep breaths that sound like, oh, I'm so relieved. Like that kind of a sound. A-H, ah. And usually after we do that for a minute or two, ask myself, am I okay? Don't go and pick up your baby if you're feeling like you're overwhelmed. But when we orient, name some things you see. My cabinet door is open. There's bananas. I need to do some dishes. Okay. Okay, I feel like Ashley. And if I feel like Ashley, then that's who goes to respond to the baby. Hi, Bailey. Hi, McCall. Yeah, Kaylee's saying that we started co-sleeping because he would cry it out for hours. And I say a lot, I was doing attachment parenting before there was actually a term for attachment parenting. Again, somebody made up that word and made up a philosophy of parenting. I was doing what works parenting. And my oldest son, he just did better if he was in bed with me and we could both sleep. And so we co-slept because that's what worked. And then by the time I had my third son, he really didn't co-sleep with us, that he was more stimulated by being in my bed, and he'd play with my hair and he'd suck on my nose and he'd crawl all over the place. But my first and second kids, if they were in bed with me, they were so settled. And it was just so interesting, really, that what works for one often doesn't work for the next. Yeah, get them to sleep first, then transfer to crib. That's a good idea. So does anybody have any questions or anything that they'd like to share? And I can sometimes bring you on to this stage also. I'm gonna go sideways because I can see you guys a little better. Oh, no, I can't. It won't let me do that. Okay, sorry. Sometimes I can add like a second screen, but I can for sure read if anybody has any questions about development or questions about sleep regression. And I'm also interested in what it was like for you when you felt like your child was going through a sleep regression, or let's just reterm it, the sleep evolution, hashtag sleep evolution. Was there something for you that was easy or that really worked for you, or that you felt that was particularly challenging? Why was it scary for you, or like no big deal? Hi, Sharon Prothy. I love you. This is good information and good to hear, Heidi says. It's also been super rough lately with not much sleep at all. Let's see. I don't know why some of these I can open up and some I can't. So sorry about that. And they're nursing all night. I was getting frustrated and wanting to wean. Isn't that so true? Some of you guys have heard this story before. A friend of mine's, that's not true. A friend of my oldest son's dad, his name is Jim. They had two kids that were a year apart. So when Jake was like 16, he had a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old. And we were on vacation together with like a bunch of older kids' families. So I was the only one with little kids on this trip. And we had like a fire pit, like doing s'mores and stuff on the beach one night. And so my kids are like 4, 5, and 6, my little boys. The next morning I'm by myself, hallelujah, walking on the beach by myself, and I hear footprints and they're jogging, and Jim comes and catches up with me, and I'm like, oh my God, I just wanted to walk by myself. And Jim says to me, Ashley, I couldn't keep my eyes off of you last night. And I'm saying like, okay, thank you. And he said, when we were sitting at the bonfire, your little boys were just climbing all over you. That one was on your back and one was in your lap and one needed us some more and one was running off. And he said, I know it's exhausting. And he's like 6'5", like a big dad. And he got all quiver-chinned and he said, you know, I remember the last time that Connor reached for my hand to hold it. And I wish I would have known that that was the last time. And if I could go back and have a weekend again with my babies crawling all over me, I'd do anything to do it. And my brother's story of like, oh, when Remy's up at night, I just feel lucky to be up with her. And Jim's story of, I love it, it's both dads. And Jim's story of, oh, I just wish I would have known that that was the last time that Connor was gonna reach for my hand. I'd do anything to do it all again. That, now my dogs went in. They're being a nightmare. Sorry, they're ruining my mojo. So we can wrap it up here in a minute. But again, like, if we had that perspective that our kid was 15 or 16 or 20, and we knew that we would long for them to touch us and long for them to nurse again and be close to us and lay on top of us. And some days it is too much. Like, girls, I remember it. Like, some days it is way too much. But some days, when we have the capacity to just let our babies sleep with us, let our babies nurse a little longer, that you'll never regret that. And will you look back on this period and say, oh, I wish I would have just let them be with me a little longer? Or what the hell? Like, why didn't I do sleep training? That was hard. That listen to your wisdom, figure out all of the options, and then just check in with these developmental stages. That these developmental stages, for the last time, 3 to 4 months, around 9 months, about 18 months, and 3 years. That each of those times, the babies are going through separation anxiety. They are scared to death. They are not sleep regressing. That is not true. What they are doing is developing. They're right on track. They are going through something that all babies are supposed to go through, and you didn't do anything wrong, and they're not moving backwards. That they are kicking ass, and so are you. And then do things like self-care. For me, it was baths and yoga. That if I was doing yoga 3 to 4 times a week, and I didn't care if I was taking a gentle yoga class, a restorative yoga class, or a really hard Ashtanga yoga class, whatever it was for me, it was this escape. And I would leave that class feeling more settled, and I felt like my capacity was greater. So I could handle a little more, or the days didn't seem so hard because I was putting myself first. My yoga teacher, her name is Halakori, she says a lot, something like this, that when we are centered in ourself, it's the least self-centered thing we'll ever do. So just think of that. When I'm centered in myself, when I feel like Ashley, you should feel like yourself, not Ashley, then my capacity is greater. Then it's actually a gift to my family. It's a gift to my children. It's a gift to everyone because I'm responding and making decisions based on my centered self versus fear or exhaustion or feeling overwhelmed because my mother or my mother-in-law or my sister or my cousin are telling me, this is what I did and this is what you need to do. My baby was sleeping through the night. Why do we care? Like, it's not a competition. It's not a race to see who can have their baby sleep through the night sooner. That thinking about this time of my life is precious and me and my baby, we're gonna do it our way. And that's just a beautiful gift. Thank you for sharing this, Carla said. Brooke Hardy says, I love this so much. And Heidi Faith, if you guys don't know Heidi Faith, she's just a gem. She supports so many moms, and especially moms that have lost babies. She's a gem, and we're lucky to have her in our community. So feel free. This video will stay up, and you can ask questions or share your stories of things that worked, what's some self-care that I've been doing. Is there something that I need support with? So, well, hi, Andrea Duckworth. So my dear friend Andrea Duckworth is on right now. And she just took her oldest baby to college all the way from Kansas City to Syracuse University in upstate New York. So you want to talk about separation anxiety. Right now, moms, when our babies go to college, then we have separation anxiety and we want to go sleep again, for sure. And our perspective is so different. Like, we're not exhausted from being up all night with our babies, but we are exhausted from worrying what our babies are doing when they're not in our home. So it's just really different and really sometimes the hardest part of our lives, but also so beautiful when our babies kind of fly the coop. So this is going to stay live. ask questions, share your stories. Try to notice when people use terms like sleep regression and what that's like for you, how that affects you, or any other kind of parenting terminology. So many moms that are pregnant, you know, that our friends or family will be like, oh my God, childbirth, it's the hardest thing you're ever gonna do. And man, oh man, that sure sets the stage for an exciting, you know, becoming mother day. Instead of saying something like, oh, the day you have that baby, you become a mother, and it's worth having one hard day to get to feel that baby come out of your body. Oh, how different that would feel. So allow yourself to kind of block the feeling of sleep regression. Try to use the term evolution or developmental stage, that what my baby's going through, instead of my baby's going backwards, that my baby's actually suffering a little bit right now, and what they need is a lot of connection and love, and they're gonna just really do great moving through it. So it's with my honor to get to have been with each of you today, and thanks for being here, and let me know if you need any extra support. I'm happy to give it. Namaste.